My name is Evan, and I'm 27. 6 months ago, I left my parents' house thinking it was the last time I'd ever step foot in that place again. I didn't make a scene. No slamming doors, no shouting matches, just a quiet exit. I packed only a duffel bag, a few changes of clothes, and my laptop. That was it. I was done. Or so I thought. I'm sitting on my couch in my new apartment now, staring at my phone, which is buzzing nonstop. Each notification is from my parents, each one a reminder that I'm no longer their financial crutch. They tried to reach me for days, sending messages that range from desperate to angry, all demanding I come back, all trying to convince me that I'm the bad guy. It's almost funny how quickly they think they can erase my decision to walk away from years of manipulation. But let me rewind and tell you how I ended up here. Growing up, my parents weren't exactly the warm and nurturing type. I wouldn't call it abuse, but the love in our house came with strings attached. I was the dependable one, the one who never caused trouble, the one who kept my head down, worked hard, and avoided rebellion. My older brother, Zach, on the other hand, was the golden child, a creative soul, a free spirit who could do no wrong in their eyes. He could drop out of college without consequences, quit his jobs without a second thought, and still be welcomed back home with open arms. Meanwhile, I was putting myself through college, juggling part-time jobs, and immediately securing a job in finance after graduation. I didn't ask for their help. I never had to. But Zach, well, he was different. He never had to worry about money, at least not the way I did. If he ever needed anything, money for rent, bills, or groceries, he would get it without question. But me, I had to work for everything I had. That was fine. I didn't mind helping out from time to time. But slowly, over the years, the requests became more frequent. The bills, the utilities, the mortgage. At first, it was a few hundred here and there. But soon enough, I was covering most of the household expenses, all while Zach played video games, leaving everything to me. It was never enough. They always expected more. I didn't complain. After all, they were my family. But that was the problem. I was the only one doing anything, while Zach coasted through life, oblivious to the strain he was putting on me. My parents didn't say it outright, but I could feel the pressure. Mom would make offhand comments about how tight money was and how much Zach was struggling. Dad, too, would casually mention how hard Zach was trying, as if he were some misunderstood genius. I always knew what they were doing, but I let it slide. Until one Sunday afternoon, everything changed. It was just a regular Sunday. I had finished a grueling week at work and, as usual, stopped by my parents' house on my way home. I brought over some groceries because I knew they hadn't been able to do their shopping again. It had become a pattern, one I had accepted for years. But this time, things felt different. As soon as I walked in the door, I knew something was off. Mom was sitting in the living room, arms crossed, her lips pressed tight in that thin line that always meant she was angry. Zach was sprawled out on the couch, his attention absorbed in his phone, as if nothing was wrong. And Dad, standing in the kitchen, shook his head like he was disappointed in me for something I hadn't even done yet. Evan, we need to talk, Mom said, her tone stern. I sighed inwardly. I had a feeling I knew where this was going. I set the bags down and tried to brace myself for the inevitable. What's going on? We've been talking, Dad said, stepping forward, his tone trying to sound reasonable. We think it's time you contribute more. You make good money. And it's not fair that we're struggling while you're out there living your life and spending your paycheck however you want. I was speechless for a moment. I had been contributing for years. I had paid for their groceries, utilities, and mortgage without ever asking for a thank you. But now, they were asking for more. And what was even more infuriating was how casually they made it sound, as if it was just a small request. A reasonable request. I already am contributing, I said, my voice rising slightly. Mom scoffed, her arms tightening across her chest. A few bills here and there. That's nothing compared to what we need. I could feel my fists clenching at my sides. The anger bubbling inside me was hard to control. I've been covering the mortgage for the last 2 years. That's not nothing, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. At that point, Zach finally spoke up, rolling his eyes. Come on, man, you know they've done a lot of us. It's just money. Just money. It was always just money. Zach had done nothing. He was still living at home, playing video games all day, contributing nothing. I had had enough. I turned to him, my voice low but sharp. You've done nothing. You've been sitting on your ass for years, living off of everyone else. And you're telling me it's just money. Don't talk to your brother, lad. Mom snapped, her face turning red. I felt something inside me snap. All of the years of resentment, all of the built-up anger from being the one who always had to take care of everything. It all came rushing to the surface. I had done everything for them, for years. And it was never enough. They never cared about my sacrifices, and they sure as hell didn't appreciate them. I was done. I took a deep breath and stood my ground. Let me get this straight. You want me to pay for the entire mortgage, cover every expense, and you want me to do all of this while Zach sits here and does absolutely nothing. Mom's face was livid. We just thought, as our son, you'd want to help your family. I couldn't take it anymore. The manipulation, the guilt trips, the constant demands. No, I said, my voice steady but cutting. I'm done. And with that, I grabbed my bag and walked out the door, not looking back. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I just left. No more explanations. No more justifications. I was finally free. The weeks following my departure were a mix of freedom and disbelief. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel burdened by guilt. I wasn't constantly worried about paying the bills, about being there when they needed me. I could finally breathe, in a way I hadn't been able to for years. But as the days passed, the silence between me and my family grew deafening. At first, I thought I'd made the right decision. I knew I had to set boundaries. But the constant barrage of messages from my parents began to chip away at my newfound peace. I ignored the texts. I ignored the calls. I had made my decision. And I wasn't about to go back to the toxic pattern that had defined my relationship with them for years. But then one day, 6 months after I left, a message from my dad popped up on my phone. The message was simple. Why haven't you paid the mortgage this month? I stared at the screen for a long time, letting the words sink in. The dark satisfaction that filled my chest wasn't guilt. It was a strange feeling of control, of finally having a voice. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me again, and certainly not for the sake of their comfort. I took a slow, deliberate breath and tapped out a response. Oh, I thought I wasn't welcome anymore. The message was short, but it hit them where it hurt. The phone started buzzing, first with my mom's name, then my dad's, then Zach's. They were all trying to contact me. Oh, trying to reel me back in. And it felt almost comical. For years, I had been the one to bail them out, the one to solve every problem they couldn't manage. And the second I stopped, everything fell apart. But it was different now. I wasn't going to fall for their emotional manipulation. Not this time. I leaned back on my couch, arms crossed, watching the phone vibrate on the table, like it was some wild animal trapped in a cage. My mind was clear, my resolve unwavering. They had never been my safety net. I had always been theirs. The messages flooded in. My mom was furious, demanding to know how I could do this to them after everything they had done for me. My dad was trying to sound reasonable, at first appealing to my sense of duty, then growing frustrated when I didn't immediately respond. Zach was just trying to guilt-trip me into taking the responsibility again. As usual, curiosity got the better of me, and I finally decided to look at the messages. My mom texted, "What is wrong with you? How could you do this to us? The bank just called. We're late on the mortgage payment. Are you really this cruel?" Dad's text was much more measured. "Evan, this is serious. We can't afford to be behind on the mortgage. We could lose the house. Call me now." Zach's text came in shortly after. "Dude, you know, they don't have the money. Are you really going to let mom and dad lose the house just to prove a point?" I had seen this play out 100 times. The guilt trip was on schedule. My family always had a way of making me feel like the villain for not continuing to be their financial lifeline. But this time, I wasn't falling for it. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let them stew in their panic for a while. They needed to understand that I wasn't going to be there to bail them out anymore. I had done my part. I had paid my dues. And I wasn't going to let them guilt me into taking on their mess again. After about 20 minutes, I sent a message back to Dad. "Not my problem anymore." Within seconds, my phone started blowing up again, and I felt a sense of dark satisfaction spread through me. the desperation in their texts, the way they tried to manipulate me into feeling responsible for their mistakes. It was all so transparent now. Zach texted again. Answer your phone. This isn't funny. Mom's crying. Dad's freaking out. You need to fix this. I couldn't help but laugh. Fix this. I thought. They thought I had set their house on fire, instead of just stopping my role as their personal ATM. But then the final straw came when my dad called. I let it go to voicemail at first, but then I decided to pick up. The conversation was as expected. Evan, this isn't you. We raised you better than this, he said, his voice tight with frustration. Oh, really? I said. My voice flat, because the only thing I remember is you always being there when it was convenient for you. But every time I needed something, you were either too busy or too wrapped up in your own mess to help. There was silence on the other end of the line. The guilt trip wasn't working anymore. I could feel it. We just need a little help, Dad said, almost pleading. Please, just this month. We're behind, and if we don't pay, the bank will start foreclosure proceedings. I exhaled slowly. Sell the house then. The anger in Dad's voice was palpable as he screamed at me to be reasonable. He was still trying to pull me back in, but I wasn't going to let him. No, I said, my voice resolute. You need to learn to stand on your own. I'm not your fall guy anymore. The rest of the conversation was a blur of desperation and empty promises. But I knew in that moment I was done. For the first time, I felt free from their manipulation. And no amount of guilt trips or pleas could change that. The hours that followed felt like a strange mix of satisfaction and finality. I knew this wasn't just the end of my relationship with my family. It was the beginning of something new. Something entirely mine. As I sat back on the couch, listening to my phone vibrate relentlessly with calls and texts, I finally allowed myself to relax. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I stopped being everyone's scapegoat. The moment I stopped being used as their personal bank. But even as the silence started to settle in, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over yet. I had made the decision to step away, to cut the toxic ties. But I knew my family wouldn't let it go easily. The calls and messages came in waves, each one more desperate than the last. They had never been taught responsibility. They had never had to face consequences for their actions. Now that the money was gone, they were panicking, realizing they had no backup plan. One message caught my attention, the one from my mom. You don't understand. You'll regret this. You'll see how far this will go. We need you. Evan, don't let this ruin everything. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to process the words. There it was again, the guilt, the manipulation. It was almost laughable how quickly they had turned the tables, how quickly they tried to convince me that I was the one ruining everything. But I was done being their emotional punching bag. I wasn't going to carry their weight anymore. So, I replied, each word more deliberate than the last. You've had enough time. I'm done bailing you out. Deal with the mess you made. It was a weight off my chest to send that message. I hit send with a sense of finality, knowing I wasn't going to fall for their emotional manipulation again. For the first time, I felt like I had control over my own life. But even after I sent that message, the phone kept buzzing. Mom texted again. We've done everything for you. We gave you everything. And this is how you repay us. I couldn't help but smile. This wasn't about me repaying anything anymore. This was about me standing up for myself, breaking free from the cycle of abuse and manipulation that I had been trapped in for so long, for years. I had given them everything, my time, my money, my energy. And it had never been enough. They had expected me to keep sacrificing, keep giving, and they were angry because, for once, I had said no. Then came the final text from my dad. You're our son. You can't just walk away from us like this. You'll regret it. We'll lose everything. I didn't hesitate. I wasn't going to be drawn back into their drama. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me into feeling responsible for their failures. I hit send one last time. You're going to have to figure this one out on your own. I'm done. I could feel the tension in my chest dissipate as I turned my phone off. No more notifications, no more guilt, just silence. The relief was overwhelming. It wasn't just the financial burden that had been lifted. It was the emotional weight, the years of resentment, the feeling of always being second to Zach, of being expected to sacrifice everything while he did nothing. Now, I was free, and I wasn't going to let anyone drag me back into that toxic dynamic. The aftermath of that day was strange. For the first time, I was truly alone. Not in a sad way, but in a liberating way. I had always believed that family meant endless support, that they should be there for you, no matter what. But I had been wrong. Family can be toxic. They can take advantage of you, manipulate you, and wear you down until you have nothing left to give. But now I was free, and I wasn't going to let their failures define me. I knew the road ahead would be difficult. I wasn't naive enough to think they would just leave me alone. I expected them to continue trying to manipulate me. But this time, I was ready. I had learned to say no. I had learned to set boundaries. And that was a lesson I would never forget. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I spent more time doing things for myself. Things I had put off for years because I was too busy playing the role of the dutiful son. I took up hobbies I had abandoned. I reconnected with old friends. I started focusing on my career, something I had neglected, while I was trying to fix everyone else's problems. And most importantly, I began to understand that my worth wasn't defined by my ability to please others, by my willingness to sacrifice for people who didn't value me. My worth came from within. It came from my ability to stand up for myself, to walk away when I needed to, and to prioritize my own happiness over the toxic demands of others. Cutting ties with my family wasn't easy, and it still isn't. But in the end, it was the best decision I ever made. I had spent so many years being the person everyone relied on, the one who always picked up the slack, always fixed the problems. But when I stopped, when I set that boundary, they were forced to face the consequences of their actions. They were forced to realize that I wasn't their safety net anymore. As I continue to move forward, I know that there will be challenges. I know that I'll have to confront their manipulations, their guilt trips, and their attempts to draw me back in. But I'm ready for it, because I finally understand that true freedom comes from breaking free of the people who try to keep you small. True freedom comes from choosing yourself. And for the first time in my life, I'm doing just that.